Do you think it's a coincidence that these Brandon Aiyuk staged social media events have often included Jaden Daniels today? And then before the draft, there was something where he said, it was on Instagram, in 6 days, it's going to be fireworks. Maybe Aiyuk thought he was going to get traded on the draft night. Washington has Adam Peters.
Right.
A lot of times teams like to surround a young quarterback with a wide receiver he went to college with. So there's some chemistry. And
Washington is a unique situation because I know a lot of people would look at them and say, rookie head coach, rookie general manager. They're like the Niners were when Shanahan and Lynch took over. But I think that's a misread on that situation. They signed 20 veteran free agents. That's got to be the record for this offseason. That's got to be the most. And I was told from a buddy I know who knows Bob Myers well that, Myers was brought there to set the football thing, get the football thing going. So he brings in Peters from UCLA. They've got Quinn to be the head coach. They want to turn it around as fast as possible, start winning games, start building momentum, putting butts in the seats so they can try to get a new stadium there in Maryland built in the next, 5 to 10 years. But they're not in your typical 5-year plan. Hey, let's just show, let's try to get to 500 this year. No, they're in an absolute sprint to try to be, regain relevance, regain, the fan base that's been just dormant since Dan Schneider bought it. And they're trying to jumpstart an iconic franchise and get a new stadium built and up the value of that franchise by $500 million. I mean, they're thinking big and they're aggressive. So while Aiyuk might seem like a overly aggressive move for a first-year regime, don't look at them as a first-year regime. They're in a sprint to build the thing up. So they may view Aiyuk as a necessity.
Yeah,
so
they can afford him. They don't have a quarterback on a rookie deal. They're like best friends. I mean, what about the Niners trade Aiyuk to Washington? You could ask for their first round pick, but I still don't think a pick next year gets it done. This is a team that needs to win the Super Bowl this year. So how about trade Aiyuk for Terry McLaurin? They're similar. McLaurin's about 2-3 years older. His base salary the next 2 years is $15 million, which is right in the Niners price range. What do you think?
They got 3 receivers that are really interesting there. McLaurin, because he's a true number one, and he would give the Niners a replacement that's signed and ready and this and that. Jahan Dotson's really interesting. He had a really good game against the Niners at Levi's a year or two ago. Penn State rookie in the 2022 draft, former first-round pick, great ball skills. And then the third guy that's really interesting is Luke McCaffrey. What if they said, we'll give you Luke McCaffrey in a number one? Or what if they said, we'll give you Terry McLaurin in a third, or Jahan Dotson in a 2, or
McLaurin in a third? Yes,
in a
yes,
1.
Please. Thank you very much. I'll take that. To me, it's perfect. I mean, he's not too old. He's signed for the next 2 years. He'd be affordable enough for the 49ers, and he replaces all of Aiyuk's production, about like 75 catches a year, about 5-6 touchdowns a year. Terry McLaurin can do that. He's every bit as athletic as Aiyuk, and he wouldn't complain about his role in the offense.
No, I think McLaurin would be ideal. I mean, he would be ideal. Luke would be, a popular thing, obviously, with Christian.
For sure.
Have
them both.
Dotson's interesting because he's another receiver that has great ball skills. The other question is, there's a lot of talk that the Commanders are shopping or will shop or have shopped Jonathan Allen from their defensive line. And we know how the Niners are about defensive line, and we can talk more about that. But would you take Jonathan Allen in one of those receivers and no pick?
Jonathan Allen is interesting because he's, to me, like legitimately better than Hargrave and Collins. Hargrave and Collins, I have questions about those two. I mean, can either one stop the run? I want to know. Jonathan Allen can stop the run.
Especially Hargrave. I mean, Hargrave, we all jumped up and down and clapped like, we were trained animals when they signed Hargrave. But you know what? That move sucked. That was an awful move.
It was bad.
He played terrible, and it forced them to get rid of Ebukam, Azeez Al-Shaair, Hassan Ridgeway, Jimmy Ward, Emmanuel Mosley. I mean, they probably lost
I got another one
6
for you.
good run defenders.
I got another one for you. Is Eric Armstead.
Armstead, yeah.
Armstead too, a year later. I think
Right.
they had to choose between them, and they had to get rid of Armstead because they could.
You broke up your team for Hargrave, and then Hargrave was just he's not a good run defender. He never has been a good run defender. But he showed up and he wasn't in great shape. And I mean, talk about a guy who, I mean, that's one of those, if you just look at the name, you say, oh, the Niners signed Javon Hargrave. You know how many people that day were like, it's going to be unfair for offensive lines to have to block Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave. Well, I mean, Javon Hargrave was totally mediocre at best. I mean, maybe had maybe a game and a half of good production. The rest of it, he was a total liability.
Look, if I were the Niners general manager, I would rather have 2 years of Terry McLaurin for $15 million a year than 3, 4, 5 years of Brandon Aiyuk for $31 million a year. Like that's a no-brainer to me. So if that's what Brandon wants, let Washington pay him and make that trade. Terry McLaurin's a hell of a player. He's never played with a good quarterback. Put him in this offense with Brock. I bet if you put Terry in this offense and Aiyuk in that offense, McLaurin might have better numbers.
Oh, he would.
For half the price.
I mean, Ayuk's great. He's a second team All-Pro. He's a true number one receiver. He does a bunch of things that the Niners should love, right? He blocks downfield and
great route runner, tough.
Great route runner. You never feel like he's getting shut down. You just feel like they go in other directions.
Can beat the press.
He can
line up inside, can line up outside for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot to like about Aiyuk.
But so can Terry.
But it's supply and demand.
Yeah.
And if you lose Brock Purdy, you might wait 25 more years to find a franchise quarterback. You get rid of Brandon Aiyuk, you'll be able to replace Brandon Aiyuk within a year, 2 years.
Yeah, his skill set seems super rare, but then his production isn't. And when you're paying him $31 million a year and he's still giving you 70 catches and 6 touchdowns, and you look around the league and see all the other wide receivers who produce that for half the price, you're going to kick yourself. I mean, even with Bosa, everyone says, oh, great trade. I mean, great deal. Great contract. Yeah, he gave him 10.5 sacks last year. So Leonard Floyd did the same thing for like a third of the price. When you give a player that kind of money, they really have to produce every year. You can't have a down year at that price point because it hurts the team.
Well, and also, I mean, look at it this way too. With what the Niners are going to pay Brock Purdy, if they're either going to take a back step and not be as good, or they're going to have to get really equal production out of some player who's making a whole lot less than the player they're replacing.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like, and what position are you, could you potentially get somebody who, could produce at a great level and not make as much? It's probably wide receiver. So I think there's a very good chance, we debated, is it Debo or is it Aiyuk? When you look at what Brock's going to actually get paid, it might be Debo and Aiyuk that both have to go.
Yeah.
So maybe this whole thing, maybe the Niners, as the Aiyuk quarterback markets or as the Purdy quarterback markets exploded, they might be looking at this and they may have changed their whole thinking on Aiyuk from we need him at our price to we can't really afford him at anybody's price.
No. And to your point, spending huge money on wide receivers hasn't really produced Super Bowl championships for anyone. So maybe it's not the move.